Kevin Durant's NBA career is going to be an incredibly difficult one to figure out by the time that it is over. There's a path here where Kevin Durant could have ended up looking like a LeBron-level figure within the history of the league. Unfortunately for him, because of some of his own decisions as well as just some really, really bad luck, that's not going to happen for him. But to have someone with this level of upside and this level of potential and have their career in many respects be a disappointment makes it an incredibly interesting career to talk about. And in many ways, the beginning of Kevin Durant's career sets kind of the theme for the rest of his career, where there's just a lot going on. He goes second overall behind Greg Oden, who's going to be getting his own video at some point, I'm sure, because people love to talk about him like he was this complete bust when really he just got injured. And Durant shows up to the league and there's just chaos around him all the time. The team moves to Oklahoma City. The original coach tried to play him as like a shooting guard, and then they tried to play him at the 5, and they didn't really know what to do with him. And the fact that he really thrived in his first couple of seasons in the league statistically is a testament to how incredible Kevin Durant because there was just so much chaos happening around him at the time. And that run in Oklahoma City, I think, is the defining piece of the legacy of Kevin Durant, because there's so much talent there and there's so much potential, and there's 3 MVPs on the roster: Harden, Westbrook, Durant, and they made it work. Like, it's not like guys were unhappy. It's not like they didn't want to play with each other. The only reason that anybody ended up leaving was because either Durant goes to Golden State to try and win some titles, or Harden gets traded for a variety of different reasons, which we've talked about in other videos. But again, that's the theme here for Durant, is there's all this potential, there's all this stuff that could happen, and ultimately it always falls short. But for me, when I think about those Oklahoma City teams, I think about 2 things. One, that 2012 finals against Miami is way closer than a lot of people want to give it credit for. It's basically just thought of as, okay, LeBron gets his first title. Oklahoma City wasn't quite ready yet. It was also the last game that all 3 of Harden and Westbrook and Durant played together. But really, when you look back on it, they could have won that series, and winning a title at that young of an age, I think, could have set KD up for this like GOAT path that we're going to talk about throughout the video, where there's a couple of turns here that he could have made that really would have put him at the forefront of a potential GOAT conversation. That doesn't happen, and then the next pivot point for him within his career in Oklahoma City is in 2016. They make the Western Conference Finals. They play Golden State. They're up 3-1 in the series, and eventually the Game 6 Klay Thompson game happens. Without that game, if Klay Thompson doesn't absolutely lose his mind in Game 6 of the 2016 NBA Finals, Western Conference Finals, everything looks completely different for Kevin Durant. I think that just based strictly off that series and the matchup problems that they gave Golden State, they were arguably the best team in the entire league that year. And if he wins that title, that 3-1 comeback doesn't happen. He never leaves to go to Golden State, at least not that offseason. He wouldn't leave Oklahoma City that offseason if they had just made the finals or obviously just won a championship. And if he doesn't go to Golden State that offseason, it couldn't have happened. It's the only year that he could have gone. And that is a team for me that, because of the history that was that season in 2016 with Golden State and then with Cleveland ultimately, bringing out the 3-1 comeback and winning that series in the finals, the team that gets lost in the shuffle there for me is that Durant team, because everything about the entirety of the next 10 years of the NBA could have looked entirely different if that Game 6 Klay game did not happen. Then we go to Durant going to Golden State, and I will still defend Durant going to Golden State from a logistical standpoint. The concept of NBA players having every right and every opportunity to play where they want to play is a foundational part of what makes the NBA great. Free agency and trade requests are one of the things that makes the NBA as relevant as it is, and Kevin Durant was just exercising that option. Now, yes, it was a crazy opportunity to go and join a team that was so successful with the cap spike. It was a crazy amount of circumstances that came together, but overall, logistically, I still defend Durant's decision to go to Golden State. However, when it comes to his legacy, this is the thing that probably ruins it the most, because again, if you're thinking about the GOAT conversation, you're thinking about the modern greatest player of all time, that being LeBron James. You can talk about Michael Jordan in a different video, but the modern player, the since Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time is LeBron. And he had a lot of similar issues to KD in terms of the beginning of their careers. LeBron goes to Miami, he wins 2 titles. People don't really think of them as outstanding achievements. And really the legacy for LeBron starts to turn around once he goes back to Cleveland, once he wins the title in 2016, which is kind of like for his own city, right? And so if Durant at some point had won a title or continues to go on and win a title outside of Golden State, maybe that will be a turning point for his legacy. But the difference for LeBron is it happened earlier in his career, and he has since had even more success with a different team, that being the Lakers. Whereas for KD, the entirety of his championship legacy, which is something that you need to have if you want to be considered one of the greatest players of all time, revolves around one of, if not the greatest teams of all time, which he had joined and was already incredibly successful before he got there. He can make the decision. He can do whatever he wants. I don't blame him for it. It made the league kind of boring, but that's okay. When you're talking about legacy, when you're talking about trying to be one of the greatest players of all time, this is just something that you can't do unless it's only a piece of your championship history. And really, KD's opportunity to change that and change the mindset around him was his move to Brooklyn. Because even once adding Harden and having Kyrie there and all the talent that they had there, I think that had they won the title in 2021 or 2022 in Brooklyn, I think people would have seen that as a real title for Kevin Durant. I don't think it would have held the same amount of weight as LeBron winning in Cleveland because that's his original team and there's all these narratives and storylines and going against Golden State and all that stuff. I don't think it would have had the same level of weight from a legacy standpoint, but in terms of like washing away the 2 titles, not really counting Golden State, kind of like LeBron's 2 titles in Miami didn't really count until he won one somewhere else. From a legacy standpoint, it would have made a huge impact, even though it wouldn't have quite been on the same level as that Cleveland title for LeBron. And missing out on that, by the way, missing out on that just barely. I mean, there were so many chances for Brooklyn, especially in 2021, to have an incredible season, to go on and win the title. I fully believe that when healthy, they were the best team in the league. And unfortunately, that Milwaukee series, they just continued to get hurt and they never found it ever again. And then, of course, that situation falls apart as well. And KD asking out and now ending up in Phoenix, I think, was kind of the nail in the coffin of his potential, like, top 5, top 8 candidacy in terms of greatest players of all time. He's very securely in the top 15 at the moment, for me at least. But if he was ever going to make a late career push for like top 5, top 6, I think it would have had to happen in Brooklyn. Because now in Phoenix, let's say they win the title this year or next year, it counts and it's helpful to his legacy. But at a certain point, like, you have all these different chances, and if you can't capitalize on it, people just aren't going to give you credit. And to me, that's the sad truth about Kevin Durant's career, is he didn't necessarily, technically, in my opinion, do anything wrong. He didn't do anything egregiously wrong. The Golden State thing was a mistake, I think, in terms of him misunderstanding how little people would care about titles that he won with those Warriors teams. And that was a mistake from a legacy standpoint, but it's not like, he was in any kind of legal trouble. Really, it just comes down to poor decision-making from a legacy standpoint and a little bit of bad luck, which is the last piece of this, and that is the injury stuff. He misses most of a season with a foot injury in Oklahoma City. He tears his Achilles, misses an entire season with Brooklyn. And since the Achilles injury, despite being incredible in the games that he's played, he's had a lot of just weird, random fluke injuries. A couple of knee injuries, the ankle injury that he suffered in Phoenix in his first home game, warming up before the game. There's just a lot there from a bad luck perspective. And not only does it limit his legacy overall, but also when it's all said and done, Kevin Durant's going to be a little bit lower in some of the career statistical categories than maybe you would have thought that he would be, and certainly in terms of games played, just because of some of those injury issues and missing, almost 2 entire seasons basically with individual injuries, those being the foot injury as well as the Achilles thing. And to me, I really feel like there's a scenario, given the incredible talent of Kevin Durant and the perfect era really that he grew up in for his skill set and came up into the league for his skill set, I think there was a true opportunity for him to be considered right there with LeBron in terms of the greatest modern player that the league has ever seen. And had they won the title in 2012, had he not gone to Golden State as a result of having some success in Oklahoma City, winning potentially a couple of titles in Oklahoma City, or just going somewhere else, going somewhere that wasn't Golden State, going to Boston, going to Dallas, so something like that wasn't joining this great team. Or even if everything happened the exact same, but they win a title or 2 in Brooklyn, there's so many paths and so many opportunities for KD to potentially have this GOAT career, and that's the sad thing to me. He's had an incredible career. No disrespect to him whatsoever, but there were so many opportunities where it could have been better, and I think that is ultimately going to be the legacy of Kevin Durant's career, is disappointment. Someone that could have been so much better, someone that could have had such a better legacy, someone that from a talent perspective, and anybody that watched Kevin Durant throughout his career can clearly point to him as one of the greatest basketball players that has ever lived. But a couple of legacy missteps, I think, is going to keep him outside of the true top tier of the history of the game. Now, I am willing to account for the possibility that whether it be in Phoenix or maybe there's another destination, maybe this guy's going to play until he's 40. If he wins a couple of titles, sure, maybe he can push himself up there with a late career surge. But realistically, I think that there's really no changing the way that most people feel about Kevin Durant. Prior to going to Golden State, I think he was one of the most beloved players in the league. He had this passion for the game that everybody recognized and appreciated. And for most people, from the minute that he decided to go to Golden State, he was like a cross off in their legacy rankings. And then the lack of success from a championship perspective since then has only further cemented that. And again, I think that's the really difficult part for me, is there's just really no way for him to change a perception of him that I think ultimately is inaccurate, but from the evidence that's presented, you can't really disprove. And that is that in some ways, his career's been a bit of a disappointment in some ways.